Name the remake of the groundbreaking horror movie in which the villain...
Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, Dawn of the Dead, The Hills Have Eyes, Amityville Horror, Last House on the Left, Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, My Bloody Valentine, When a Stranger Calls, Prom Night, Black Christmas, House of Wax, The Fog, Piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
Welcome to Don't Press Play, the show where I press play so that you don't have to. I'm your host Alex, and this is Season 2, the season of remakes. All season long, we're revisiting the movies that Hollywood just couldn't leave alone, the ones they dusted off, reimagined, and sometimes completely butchered. Speaking of butchered, this week's movie is Halloween from 2007, directed by Rob Zombie. Halloween, the name alone can send chills down your spine. In 1978, John Carpenter gave us the ultimate boogeyman, Michael Myers, stalking the quiet streets of Haddonfield, a white mask, a kitchen knife, a shape in the shadows, an unshakable sense that evil can't be stopped. Nearly 30 years later, the mask was pulled from the closet once again, but this time it wasn't Carpenter holding the knife, it was Rob Zombie. Known for his raw, grimy, and over-the-top style, Zombie took the clean, silent horror of the original and drenched it in grit, blood, and a whole lot of screaming. Some fans call it bold, others call it a disaster, but one thing's for sure, it wasn't the same Michael that we'd grown up fearing. Today we are peeling back the mask on one of the most controversial remakes in horror history. This is Halloween from 2007. Let's roll the trailers.
Tonight's brutal murders was described by police as Manson-like in its viciousness. 3 people brutally murdered and a 10-year-old boy being held in custody.
You haven't said a word for 15 years.
This summer, Rob Zombie unleashes a unique vision of a legendary tale.
Listen, be careful tonight. A lot of nutcases come out on Halloween.
Is the boogeyman real? Why are you so obsessed with the boogeyman, Tommy? Halloween night, the boogeyman attacks kids who don't believe.
Oh no, Tommy! Boogeyman's gonna get me!
I'm gonna cut that mask right off your face.
He's come back for his baby sister. To do what?
So, Halloween from 2007, remade by Rob Zombie. I would personally say it is one of the most controversial horror remakes ever done, mainly because when it comes to Halloween, it's up there with it is, one of the godfathers of horror. It's up there with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. When you say to people that you like horror movies, they kind of assume it's Michael Myers because, not just him, but the film itself set the tone for a lot of horror. And, the film Halloween was so successful that it is a reason why there was such a slasher movie boom coming out from the 1970s. And I think with that, Halloween is held at such prestige that it's almost impossible to even create that magic again. Halloween, the original, was that lightning in a bottle. It's that lightning only really strikes once, and I think that is what happened with Halloween. And before anyone says anything, my evidence against that is the other 13 sequels that have come since, and none of them have been able to be that magic in a bottle from Halloween. Okay, so with that being said, when it comes to remaking John Carpenter's Halloween, it was never ever going to be good. It wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. And I think the problem with this film is that the way they've gone about it is they quite literally remade the film nearly shot for shot with just different characters. The dialogue and everything is pretty much bang on, beat for beat the same, until towards the end where the film starts to breathe on its own a little bit. And in my own personal opinion, I think with Rob Zombie's Halloween, I think that had they stuck with the original true crime element from the beginning of looking at Michael Myers' backstory and Michael Myers as a child, and I think if his first film would have just been him as a child, and then his Halloween 2 would have been that Laurie Strode element, but done your own thing with it, I think that we'd be thinking of this Halloween remake in a completely different tone. Because I think you can really see where Rob Zombie thrives in his own element within these films, especially 1 and 2. In Halloween, the remake, the parts of Michael Myers' childhood that are filmed and that aren't a direct remake from the original, it's very strong. The characters are really well written. The characters are really well written, and the way they interact. I mean, it's all very Rob Zombie, of course it is. You've got Sherry Moon there, and, you know, it's very vulgar. It's really over the top at some points, but it's very Rob Zombie, and it works so well because it's what he is good at. And he's not trying to appease the studio or the Halloween fans because he's making his own thing there. And the young Michael Myers and Sherry Moon's character, it's all so sad and so heartbreaking, and you really feel for this child of Michael Myers. And I think had this entire film been Michael as a child and the lead up to Halloween night where he kills his sister, and that being the ultimate ending of the first film, and then Halloween 2, he can do his own thing, and I think we will be speaking about this film completely different. However, that being said, that's not what happened. And in today's episode, we are going to be looking at kind of what happened and just a kind of reflection on Halloween as a remake and where we stand with it in the franchise as it goes. So Halloween and Michael Myers have been in my life forever, literally since I was conscious. I've been watching my Halloween films again. Probably shouldn't have grown up with Michael Myers, but I did. And it was always something that was on in my house, not even around Halloween time. Halloween 1 and 2 especially, Halloween H2O was another favourite in my household. And the remakes came about in 2007, so I would have been 6 years old. And I have no recollection of Halloween, the remake, ever, really. Halloween 2, I remember being a thing because I remember seeing the ads for it a lot on buses and things like that as a child. But obviously, I just wasn't conscious enough to realise that any of it was of any importance, a cultural phenomenon or not. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that I decided to rewatch or watch for the first time these remakes. And I think my mum put the first one on and the first remake on, and she turned it off so quickly because obviously she's coming from her point of, oh, it's just Halloween that's been remade. So she just thought it was a modern telling of Halloween, and she didn't think that they would be strippers and naked people and really, really vulgar language. So that film did not last for more than 2 seconds in my household. My mum was like, absolutely not, we're not putting this film on at all. And it wasn't until I it wasn't until I watched it for the first time that I kind of realised why. Because the dialogue in this film, oh my Christ. I genuinely don't think I've seen a film that is so vulgar in my life. And now knowing Rob Zombie for what Rob Zombie is, it's, you know, it's just very Rob Zombie. And I know when I first watched this film, I absolutely hated it. And it was one of those times I really struggled to get through. And I think even now I do struggle, but I'm more able to see from a point of view that it's just a Rob Zombie film rather than it being a Halloween film. And like I said, I think it's the vulgarness of the film that does put me off, but that's just because I personally think it's a bit too much. So Michael Myers' stepdad in this film is one of the most vilest creatures ever made, which is just props to the writers because, he is absolutely disgusting. And he says something and then he says, bitch, I'm gonna come over there and skull fuck the shit out of you. And it's one of those things that's like, in what world is this in a Halloween movie? Like, in what world has there been this even context for that to be even a thing? But yeah, it is. And, Judith Myers is talking about Michael, like, jerking off the rat. And it's a lot. It's a lot. Megan Trainor's husband is in this fucking film as a bully. He plays a fantastic bully. But, he says stuff like, if I give your mum a quarter, do you think you should suck my dick? It's just very, it's very rough on me. And it's a really hard watch. It's not one of the films I could show anybody else because I think they'd think I was fucking insane. So if I was to, my first review and reaction of this film is, I personally think it's a bit too vulgar for me. And I'm not a Christian lady. I'm, I can watch anything, but to me, it just really puts me off because you've got like a baby screaming and then this guy flipping the table and saying he's going to skull foot. It's a lot, okay, guys? It's a lot. So off the bat, I just think for me personally, it's always been the film that's a bit too vulgar. And I've tried so many times to watch it and understand it. And I'm kind of at a point, my relationship with this film is, yeah, it's a Rob Zombie film. It's very Rob Zombie. And I think for Rob Zombie fans, you'd absolutely love this because it's very Rob Zombie. However, it's not for me. And that's okay. And that's not me hating on this film because I absolutely think go for it. You've, been given this franchise, do what you want. And it's when I look at like Halloween 2 and see that Rob Zombie did his own thing, I think that Halloween 2 it's great because it's his own thing and it is what it is. It's just Halloween 2 remake and I know people hate it, but you don't have to like it. It's a Rob Zombie movie. It is what it is. And I think had that been the case for the first one as well, it would be a completely different story. So, a quick historic recap of these two films. So, the original from 1978, directed by John Carpenter, really tiny budget, literally a classic story of like filmmakers getting together and making a little horror film and it's all fun and games. And then, the beast of Halloween was born. And after 2002's Halloween Resurrection, which absolutely flopped. You guys know the one. It's got Tyra Banks in it. It's got Michael Myers getting kung fu kicks backwards through a window. Sometimes I talk about the Halloween franchise and I can't believe it's what I'm saying. I'll tell my partner this, who does not care about horror movies at all, and he thinks I'm pranking him, and I'm not. I'm like, this is completely true. This is just go with me. Anyway, so Dimension Films saw dollar signs and they wanted to reboot the franchise after Halloween Resurrection because there was really nowhere else they could go. Laurie Strode's been killed. Michael Myers opens his eyes in the mall, but you just had Halloween Resurrection, so where the hell do you go from there? So they thought, let's bring Rob Zombie in and give this a remake, Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake vibe. Let's just go for it and see what sticks. What we get is Michael Myers' childhood origin story, all about abuse, neglect, and his first kind of kills. We learn that Michael Myers is killing animals and keeping them in his locker, and he, kills a bully with a twig. You basically see that he's from a very abusive household. His mum is a sex worker, doing her best to provide for the family. She's married to a really abusive guy he's all bandaged up, and essentially it's all taken out on Michael, and we can kind of see how it kind of leans into that nature nurture psychological vibe of kind of Michael wasn't born evil. It is a result of his surroundings, and his surroundings is a very violent and very unsafe environment for a child to grow up in, essentially. And with that becomes a very aesthetically dirty and loud and aggressive, very Rob Zombie movie. And there is a lot more violence compared to kind of the suspense that they get from Carpenter's slow burn Halloween. A bit like I was saying in the dialogue, the original Halloween is very, American teenager white suburban middle class horror and what happens when the horror steps into middle class suburbia and what that looks like. And that is where the horror comes from a lot of people who watch Halloween, because, you know, they're watching it from the same neighborhood. Whereas this Halloween kind of is not in the same neighborhood at all, and it is a very working class Halloween flick. So there is a very stark difference between the two, especially when we're comparing it to just in terms of setting. So kind of going on with that, we kind of, if we compare the two Michael Myers in this film is like a 7-foot giant. He is played by Tyler Mane, and he is just absolutely crazy. He is like literally like a 7-foot giant, honestly. And his sheer size is absolutely terrifying. I think the mask is, you know, done absolutely fine. The mask is fine. You know, it's nothing to write home about, but it's also not terrible because, as we know, Michael Myers has had some terrible masks in his life. So Michael Myers in this film, he is a sheer brute force, like force of just terrifying, aggressive monster, but with a really humanized, like tragic monster backstory. And it does make me kind of think of like Frankenstein, because it's kind of like he isn't the monster, but he's been like created as a result of like bad people doing bad things, and now is kind of all he knows. And we kind of see that he is just trying to protect his little sister, who then grows up to be Laurie Strode. So it does rely heavily on that sister and brother bond, which is something that the Halloween franchise later tries to drop. However, in this one, it is all about family, and Michael is very family orientated, especially with his mom and with his sisters. He's very protective over them, and the whole thing is about him coming home to find his sister. And I think that one of the most tragic things about this film is the fact that Sherry Moon's character kills herself. She is watching back old tapes of her kids that when they were a little bit happier in life, and she blows her brains out. And it's so tragic because it's kind of, we see what happens when tragedy like this does happen, and we kind of do get to see what happened after Michael Myers does what he does and the effect that has on the family. Because obviously in the original, we never hear of Michael's family ever again. And I think it kind of goes one or the two ways, because in John Carpenter's, Michael is a mysterious, kind of emotionless, is an unexplainable evil. You know, he is the shape. He just glides through the night. He is this Halloween force. Whereas in Rob Zombie's, it is very much explained, and he is just a serial killer. He's brutal, and you kind of understand why. I mean, it's not an excuse for what he's doing, but you kind of get it, because when someone's in that environment, they're either going to be a bit of a weirdo or they're going to be a bit of a serial killer. And, you know, he chose both. And kind of with that becomes that violence and gore element of the two films. In the original, the violence is very implied and you don't see a lot of blood. However, we all know that Rob Zombie is not shy of a liter of blood or two. And the graphic, lingering shock of the brutality in this film are fucking insane. I think one of the worst kills in this film has to be when the stepdad is tied up and masking taped around the chair, and he's just like, neck slit. And it's so simple, but so horrific. And yeah, he absolutely does deserve it, but it's just horrific to watch. And then also Michael Myers killing a bully with a stick, and that bully also being the kid from Spy Kids and Meghan Trainor's now husband. The Meghan Trainor lore in this film is crazy. So we can't talk about Halloween without talking about Laurie. Laurie is such a crucial part of the Halloween franchise, and it goes one of two ways, really. If you go for the original route, you know, Laurie Strode is this innocent, resourceful, and she has this understated performance, and you see her being afraid, but you also see this quiet strength that she has. And, you know, she also is that representation of the perfect final girl. You know, she's a virgin, she's smart, she knows about, you know, she's smart, you know, she does her class, she does her homework, she knits. Like, she is that, like, all-American teenage girl who, this is the thing, people say this, but she smokes a joint in the original film. Laurie Strode smoked a joint in the original film. I'm just saying, so she wasn't that perfect. Men, Women and Chainsaws, you need to rewrite that, because actually Laurie Strode was getting high. Anyway, and then we have, so that's Jamie Lee Curtis' performance of her. Then we have Scout Taylor Compton's performance of her, and it's a more of a modern teen attitude, and she's more loud, she's more reactive, and she does receive less screen time because of Michael's backstory. So we do have less time with Laurie. So I think that is also why we connect with her a little bit less than we would in the original, because in the original, you know, we spend the majority of the film with Jamie Lee Curtis, whereas in this, it is a bit less. So, you know, I think that is how tone and the script have kind of impacted each Laurie's portrayal there. So we do have to take that into account. Standout performance-wise, I think we're forgetting that Danielle Harris is in this film and she plays Annie Brackett. And I think that is so fucking cool. I think that is how you do, like, a little callback for the fans. Like, if I'm gonna name names, Halloween Kills, what on earth were you doing having, like, Sheriff Brackett saying, like, "It's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to wonder scare." Halloween Kills is the worst fucking film I've ever fucking seen in my life. I will go on record and say that Halloween Kills is the worst fucking film I've ever seen. And this kind of Rob Zombie's Halloween, you just did it so well to have Danielle Harris, who obviously is Jamie in Halloween 4 and 5, and she is such like a staple in the Halloween franchise from the Halloween community. Like, everybody loves Danielle Harris, and to have her come back in a remake, still being there, still getting her check, and still providing for the franchise is so lovely. And I just think it's such a nice thing for Rob Zombie to do, to kind of know about the fans and bring in, you know, an OG. It's just phenomenal, and I think absolutely got to give him his flowers for them and Danielle Harris, because she's amazing in this film. She's just such a great performance. I'm glad she doesn't die. Annie dies in the original, but she survives in this one, and I love that because I just think I don't want to see Danielle Harris die ever. Although I think she dies in the second one. Yikes. Sorry, Danielle. So we also obviously have to talk about Dr. Loomis in this film. Now, Dr. Loomis plays a little bit of a different role in this film. I mean, it's the same character. However, we kind of see a different side to Dr. Loomis in this film. We kind of see how fame has affected the Dr. Loomis, because unlike in the original, in this remake, he has become quite famous for being Michael Myers' doctor, and we're able to kind of see, oh no, am I thinking about number 2? I can't really tell you guys. They're a bit mixed up for me. I watched them both at the same time. But either way, Dr. Loomis in this film is more opportunistic, and he's a lot more flawed than Donald Pleasance's character. Because in the original, Donald Pleasance is... Actually, no, I don't even know what I'm saying. Donald Pleasance is fucking crazy as Dr. Loomis. He is running around Haddonfield with a loaded gun, telling people to go home because the boogeyman is coming to kill you. And in this one, I think he's less crazy. I'm going to go and say he's less crazy because I don't think he can be crazier than Donald Pleasance. That man's a fucking insane. Donald Pleasance in Halloween 5, he should have been arrested because, Jesus Christ, you are a different breed of doctor if you're running around with a loaded gun on Halloween night, is all I'm going to say. But if I had to say who my favourite character is in this film, I think I would say Sherry Moon's Zombie as Michael's mother, because it just adds that tragedy, and I really feel for her as a character, and I really get that vibe of her being a mum in this film, and I just love Sherry Moon Zombie. I really do. I loved her in House with a Thousand Corpses as well, so I don't think that helps me being a bit biased, but I love Sherry Moon Zombie so much, so she's my favourite character in this film. So, upon release, it was obviously very divided amongst fans, so half of the fandom kind of hated it, and half of them hated it, like your Halloween purists. They would obviously not have any of this. But I would want to know, these Halloween purists that hate Halloween 2017, how do you stand on Halloween Kills? Because that shit is terrible. Anyway, it had some commercial success, which did obviously lead to Halloween 2 being greenlit. And then after Halloween 2, I believe they wanted him to do Halloween 3D. If I remember correctly, there was a script written or something like that, and he was going to come and direct Halloween 3D, and thank fuck that never got made, because imagine that, Halloween 3D, no thank you. But with that, I think it has gained quite a cool following in certain horror circles. I think people are at peace with it now. I think people, as horror is becoming more accessible to everybody, things are on streaming websites. I think if people are learning more about like Rob Zombie and just the way people direct and just film knowledge is becoming more accessible. People are kind of like, you know what? It's a Rob Zombie Halloween movie. Of course, that is the way it is. And at the end of the day, you can't really do anything now. It was made in 2007. So, if you want to be mad at something, be mad at Halloween Kills. That's all I've got to say. That is a wrap on this trip to Haddonfield and Rob Zombie's version of Halloween. Love it or hate it, you can't say that I didn't make an impact. If you enjoyed this episode of Don't Press Play, do me a huge favour and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of our remake season. And leave a review wherever you're listening. Seriously, it is the best way to help the show grow, and it lets me know if you're out there in the dark with me dissecting these movies. You can also share this podcast with that one friend who always says that the original is better, and let's see if we can start an argument. So, next time we're diving into another remake that split the fan base right down the middle. Until then, keep the lights low, the doors locked, and remember, some movies should stay on pause. See you in the next one.